The arena was alive with sound, a storm of alien voices shaking the air. Thousands of spectators filled the grand stone walls, their eyes glowing with excitement. The banners of the alien empire waved high, marked with the crest of victory. And in the royal box, the alien princess sat with her maids, her sharp eyes fixed on the center. There stood her champion, the undefeated warrior of her people. His armor was forged from black steel. His blade carried the honor of 100 victories. He had crushed enemies larger, faster, and stronger than any human. To the Empire, he was more than a soldier. He was a living legend. But now, across from him, stood a human. No armor, no banners, no court behind him. He wore only plain clothes, his hands resting calmly at his sides. The crowd laughed at the sight, mocking the small figure who dared to step into their arena. The princess's lips curved into a cold smile. "This will be over in seconds," she whispered to her maids. Her champion raised his sword high. The crowd roared like thunder, but the human only smiled, a strange calmness in his eyes. The signal was given. The champion rushed forward like a beast, blade flashing with power. Every eye in the arena followed the strike, certain that it would split the human in two, but in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The human moved faster than sight, his hand caught the strike, his body twisted, and his own weapon, so small it looked like nothing, slashed across the champion's chest. There was silence. The champion froze, his mighty frame shuddered, and then, to the horror of all, he was split in half. The arena gasped as one. The impossible had happened. Their greatest warrior, their legend, had fallen to a single human strike. The princess rose from her seat, her heart racing, her mind refusing to believe. Her champion lay in two broken pieces, his lifeblood soaking into the ground, and the human simply stood there, his blade dripping red, his face calm as if nothing had happened. He looked up at the royal box, meeting the princess's gaze. For the first time in her life, she felt fear. The arena masters stepped forward, their voices trembling as they declared the ancient law. In this empire, by the law of conquest, the victor claims all that belongs to the defeated. The crowd fell silent, every ear waiting for the words that would follow. They looked at the princess, for she was bound to the champion. And by law, she now belonged to the human. Her maids clutched at each other, their faces pale with terror. The princess's pride turned to rage. To be handed to a human, a creature they thought weak, was the greatest shame of all. She wanted to scream, to deny the law, but she could not. The human wiped his blade clean and spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, steady, and cold. "I claim them," he said, his eyes never leaving the princess. "You, your maids, all bound to me by law." Gasps filled the air, whispers spread like fire. The alien empire had been humiliated in front of its people. The princess gritted her teeth, her chest burning with anger. Yet deep inside, a seed of fear and curiosity grew. The human did not approach to touch her, nor did he boast of his victory. He only gave her one last glance, his smile sharper than any blade. And then he turned, walking out of the arena as if he had not just shattered her world. The silence left behind was heavier than any roar of the crowd. The princess stood frozen, her maids trembling at her side. Her champion was gone, her honor was gone, and by law, she was no longer free. But what terrified her most was not the loss. It was the human himself, because she realized, with a chill running through her veins, that this was only the beginning. The arena still shook with whispers. No one had left. The crowd could not believe what their eyes had seen. A human had killed the champion, the living legend, with one strike. And by the ancient law, the princess and her maids now belonged to him. The princess's heart pounded like a drum. Her people stared at her with mixed emotions, shock, pity, and even laughter. To them, she was no longer the untouchable jewel of the empire. She was the prize of a human. The high priest stepped forward, his robes dragging across the stone. He lifted a crystal staff and declared the words of the law once more. The blood oath binds the defeated's bond to the victor, until death or release. His voice echoed, and the princess's throat burned with shame. The maids trembled behind her. One whispered, "Princess, we are ruined." Another sobbed quietly, hiding her face. But the princess did not cry. Her eyes burned like fire. Then the human's voice cut through the silence. "I will not take them today," he said calmly. Gasps followed, confusion spread like wildfire. He looked at the princess with that same sharp smile. "Your bond to me is sealed, but I will call you when the time is right." He turned and walked out of the arena, leaving behind only questions. The people erupted, voices clashing in disbelief. Why would a human leave without claiming his reward? What game was he playing? That night the palace shook with unrest. Nobles shouted in the council chamber, demanding the law be broken. The empire could not bear the shame of their princess bound to a human, yet none dared to touch the law, for it was older than the empire itself. In her chambers, the princess paced like a trapped beast. Her maids knelt around her, still frightened. One asked softly, "What if he returns tomorrow?" The princess clenched her fists. "Then I will fight him myself." But deep inside, she remembered the way he moved, so fast, so sure, so terrifying. Her champion had fallen in one breath. What chance did she have? Days turned into weeks. The human was nowhere to be seen. At everywhere, his shadow lingered. Merchants whispered of him. Soldiers told tales of his impossible strike. In every corner of the galaxy, the legend grew. The human who split the champion in two. The princess could not sleep. Every night she saw his eyes, that strange calm, that blade cutting through destiny itself. Her pride screamed that she hated him, but a deeper voice whispered another truth, fear, and something she could not name. Then, on the 30th day, as the red moons rose over the empire's capital, a messenger arrived at the gates of the palace. He carried a single scroll, sealed with a symbol none had seen before, a circle of steel carved with the mark of humanity. The guards trembled as they handed it to her. The princess broke the seal, her hands shaking. Inside were only 6 words, simple, sharp, undeniable. "Your bond begins. Come to me." Her maids gasped. The princess's blood turned to ice. The human had returned, and this time, there would be no delay. The princess stood at the gates of her palace. Her silver robes glittered in the moonlight, but her heart was heavy. The human's message still burned in her hand. "Your bond begins. Come to me." She wanted to tear it apart, to deny the law. But the ancient code was stronger than her will. If she refused, the gods themselves would curse her. Her people would see her as a coward. So she gathered her maids, and they walked into the dark night. A ship awaited them. Not alien in design, but human. Its black hull gleamed like a blade in the sky. No banners, no symbols, no gold to show power. Yet its silence was more terrifying than 1,000 warships. The human waited at the ramp. He did not bow. He did not smile. He only said, "You came." And with those words, the princess felt chains settle on her soul. The maids followed nervously, whispering, "This ship feels alive," one said. Another clutched her robe. "Humans build monsters of steel." The door closed behind them, and the empire's world faded away. Inside, the ship was nothing like the palace. No jewels, no carvings, no soft cushions, only cold metal and glowing lights. Yet every surface hummed with hidden strength. The princess touched a wall and felt a vibration. It was as if the ship itself was breathing. The human walked ahead, silent, leading them deeper. The princess studied him, searching for weakness. He was not tall compared to her champion, not broad, not shining in armor. And yet, there was something in his steps, a weight, a command, a certainty. It was like he carried an invisible crown. They reached a chamber. Screens flickered with strange symbols. Maps of stars lit up in glowing blue. The maids gasped, some falling to their knees. They had never seen such detail. Every world, every fleet, every secret path in the galaxy. Humans had mapped them all. The human finally turned, his eyes sharp as blades. "You think I claimed you for pleasure," he said, his voice calm but dangerous. The princess stiffened, her pride boiling, but he stepped closer, his words striking deeper than any sword. "I claimed you because war is coming, and you are the key." The princess's breath caught. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but his stare froze her tongue. Her maids huddled close, afraid to even breathe. The human pressed a button, and the screen shifted. Alien fleets appeared, battles raging, worlds burning, and at the center of it all, her empire stood ready for war. Her hands shook. "Why show me this?" she whispered. The human leaned forward, his voice low. "Because your people will not survive without humanity, and neither will you." The words struck her like lightning. She had always believed her empire was eternal, unbreakable. But here was a human, one man, showing her the end of everything. And what terrified her most was the cold certainty in his voice. He was not guessing. He was telling her the future. The chamber fell into silence, the pion sang. Princess clenched her fists, torn between rage and fear. Her maids looked at her with wide eyes, waiting. For the first time in her life, the princess did not know what to do. The human turned away, his final words cutting the air. "You belong to me by law, but soon, the galaxy will belong to humanity by truth." The lights dimmed, the ship shuddered, and outside, the stars shifted. The princess realized with horror, they were no longer in her world. They were flying straight into the heart of humanity. The ship landed in the human capital. The princess had expected a gray wasteland, a primitive planet. Instead, she stepped into a city of steel and light. Towers climbed into the clouds, machines flew without wings, and voices of 1,000 languages filled the air. Her maids gasped in wonder, their fear mixing with awe. "Are these humans?" one whispered, pointing at soldiers walking in perfect lines. Each soldier moved like the human who had defeated the champion, calm, certain, dangerous. The princess felt her pride crack a little more. The human led them into a vast hall, not a palace of jewels, but a command center alive with power. Screens showed fleets moving across the stars. Generals stood in silence, waiting for his words. The princess realized with a chill, this man was not just a fighter, he was a leader of leaders, but rebellion brewed within her. At night, when the humans left them in a chamber, she gathered her maids close. Her voice was sharp, trembling with pride. "We are not his slaves, we are not his toys, we are daughters of the Empire." Her maids nodded, but their eyes betrayed fear. One maid whispered, "Princess, the law binds us. To resist is death." Another muttered, "But maybe he is not cruel." The princess silenced them with a glare, yet her own heart twisted with doubt. That same night, shadows crept into the human capital, assassins of the Portsum. Alien Empire dressed in black scales slipped past guards. Their orders were clear, kill the human and free the princess. They moved like ghosts, blades dripping with poison. No one had ever seen them fail. The princess woke to the sound of metal clashing. Her chamber door burst open, and she saw the assassins strike. But before they reached the human, he moved, like lightning, like death itself. One breath, one motion, and the first assassin was cut down. Another tried to stab his back, but he twisted, broke the blade with his hand, and snapped the assassin's neck. The maids screamed, huddling together. The princess froze, her heart pounding. She had hated him, feared him, but now she saw a truth that shook her. Her empire had sent killers, and he had destroyed them without effort. The last assassin crawled on the floor, broken but alive. The human grabbed him by the throat, lifted him high. His voice was calm, colder than ice. "Tell your masters," he said, "this princess does not belong to them anymore." With a twist, the assassin's body fell lifeless. Silence filled the chamber. The maids clung to each other, their faces pale. The princess's chest rose and fell. Rage and fear tangled inside her. She wanted to scream at him for killing her people. But another voice inside her whispered the unthinkable. Without him, she would already be dead. The human turned to her, his eyes burning. "They will keep coming," he said, his tone steady. "They will risk everything to take you back, because they know what you mean." He stepped closer, his presence crushing. "But hear this, princess, their war is already lost." She glared at him, her pride refusing to bow. "Why?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why are you so certain?" The human leaned closer, his whisper sharp as a blade. "Because I am not the only one. Every human is like me, and your empire has no idea what that means." The princess's blood ran cold. Her mind flashed. Back to the arena, to the strike that split her champion. Now she understood. It had not been luck. It had not been chance. It was simply what humans were. And if that was true, then her empire was already standing on the edge of destruction. The night after the assassin's attack, the princess could not sleep. The image of the human cutting down her people haunted her, yet so did the memory of his words. Every human is like me. Her pride fought against the truth, but her fear whispered that he might not be lying. The next morning, the human summoned her to the command chamber. The hall glowed with maps of galaxies and fleets in motion. Generals saluted him with respect, their eyes filled with trust. The princess realized he was not only a warrior, he was a commander of worlds. He motioned to the screens. "Your empire believes it has seen humanity," he said, his voice calm, "but they have only seen fragments." With a wave of his hand, the stars shifted. Images of wars long past appeared, battles stretching across Earth's bloody history. She watched humans fight humans, armies of millions clashing, weapons of fire tearing cities apart, kingdoms rose and fell, empires built and burned, and through it all, humanity survived, adapted, grew stronger. Her chest tightened as she whispered, "Why do you show me this?" The human's eyes burned like fire. "Because you must understand, princess, your people fear death, your people worship victory. But humans," he paused, his voice deepening, "we were born inside endless war, and we do not break." The screen shifted again, this time to the present. Human fleets moving like blades through the void, ships built not for beauty but for survival and destruction. Her maids gasped, trembling at the sight. One whispered, "Are they preparing for war?" The human turned, his gaze sharp. "War is already here," he said. "Your empire does know. See it yet? But the storm is coming." He stepped closer to the princess, his voice like thunder. "And when it breaks, you will choose, stand with humanity or be crushed with the rest." The princess's pride flared. "You dare threaten me," she snapped, though her voice trembled. But the human only smiled, not with cruelty, but with certainty. "I am not threatening you, princess," he said. "I am showing you the future." At that moment, alarms blared through the hall. Red lights flashed. Soldiers rushed to their stations. The screens showed her empire's warships breaking into human space. Her people had come for her, and they had brought death with them. The princess's heart raced. Her maids cried out in fear. She stared at the human, waiting for him to panic. But his expression did not change, his voice steady as iron. "Let them come," he said. "They are about to learn the truth." The hall shook as enemy fire struck the outer defenses. Explosions lit the sky above the city. The princess's breath caught, torn between loyalty to her people and the weight of the bond tying her to the human. Her world was collapsing around her. Yet one thought echoed in her mind: if this human was telling the truth, then her empire had already lost. The alarm screamed across the human capital. The sky above burned with streaks of fire as alien warships entered orbit. The princess ran to the windows of the command hall, her heart trembling. Dozens of her empire's ships blotted out the stars, weapons glowing with power. Her maids clutched each other, whispering in panic. "They came for us," one cried. "The empire will burn this planet to ashes." Another sobbed, "We are saved, the princess is saved." But the princess's chest twisted with doubt. Something in the human's calm face told her this was no rescue. The human stood before the great screens, his hands behind his back. "Contact Fleet Command," he ordered, his voice steady as stone. Officers rushed to obey. The princess stared at him, furious and afraid. "You cannot fight them," she spat. "You cannot win against the Sharte Empire." The human turned to her, his eyes sharp like blades. "You still do not understand," he said quietly. "We are not fighting to survive, princess." He stepped closer, his presence heavy as iron. "We are fighting to end this war before it begins." Outside, human warships rose from the capital like hunting beasts. Their hulls were black, their engines roared like thunder. They were not grand and beautiful like the Empire's ships, but they moved with terrifying speed, each one a weapon forged only for killing. The battle began in a storm of fire. Alien beams cut through the skies, human ships twisted and struck back with brutal precision. The city shook as explosions lit the heavens. Her maids screamed, covering their ears. The princess gripped the rail, her eyes wide. She had seen wars before, but never like this. Humans fought with no hesitation, no fear, only cold, endless resolve. One of her generals appeared on the screens, his alien face filled with rage. "Princess," he shouted, "we have come to free you. Step forward and order these humans to surrender." The hall froze. Every eye turned to her. The princess's throat tightened, her mind torn in two. If she called to her people, she would betray the law that bound her. If she stayed silent, she would betray her empire. Her maids begged, "Princess, speak, they will save us." But deep in her chest, a terrible truth grew. She was no longer certain her people could save anyone, not even themselves. The human leaned close, his whisper soft but crushing. "Choose wisely," he said. "Your words can start a war that burns the galaxy, or end one before it begins." The princess's lips trembled, her pride screaming at her to stand with her blood. But her fear, her memory of the assassins, her vision of humanity's power, all pulled her the other way. Before she could speak, the sky split open, a human supership desk. Ended, massive and dark, its shadow covering the city, its cannons glowed like suns, its size dwarfing even the largest of her empire's warships. Her maids fell to their knees, weeping in terror. The princess's breath stopped. She realized the truth. Her empire was not facing humans. It was facing monsters forged from centuries of endless war. The human finally turned, his voice calm. "Your empire believes this is their victory," he said. "But tonight, princess, they will learn." He pointed to the skies as the supership unleashed its fire. "They will learn that humanity does not fight for survival. We fight for domination." The heavens erupted in light. Alien ships tore apart one by one. Screams filled the comms. The stars themselves seemed to burn. The princess stood frozen, her soul trembling, and in that moment, she knew the choice was no longer hers. The future of the galaxy had already shifted, and humanity was at its center. The sky was burning. Alien warships fell in flames, their wrecks crashing through the clouds. The human supership stood like a god of war, its cannons glowing. Every blast tore another piece of the empire apart. The princess gripped the rail of the command hall, her knuckles white. Her maids wept behind her, torn between joy and terror. Some whispered prayers to the gods, others whispered prayers to the humans. Her heart pounded like a drum, for she knew the moment of truth had come. On the screen, her empire's high general appeared again, his face scarred with fury. "Princess," he shouted, "order these humans to stop. Remember your blood, remember your crown." The princess's throat tightened. Her mind was a storm. Her empire demanded her loyalty, but the law bound her to humanity. And now, she had seen their strength with her own eyes. The human stood beside her, his gaze locked on her face. "Your choice decides more than you know," he said calmly. "If you call to them, this war will spread until galaxies burn. But if you stand with us, it ends tonight." His words cut deeper than any blade. The princess's chest heaved, her pride and fear clashing inside her. The general screamed through the screen, "Speak, daughter of the empire, or watch your people perish." The princess closed her eyes. She remembered the champion split in half. She remembered the assassins dying in the shadows. She remembered the human's words, "Every human is like me," and she realized the truth. Her empire had already lost. She opened her eyes, her voice steady at last. "I stand with humanity," she said. Her maids gasped, some in shock, some in relief. The general's face twisted with rage. "You traitor," he spat before his ship vanished in fire. The hall fell silent. Only the thunder of battle outside remained. The human did not smile, but his eyes burned with victory. "You chose with your heart," he said, "and you chose wisely." The princess's legs trembled, but she stood tall. She knew she was no longer just a prize bound by law. She was now the bridge between two worlds. Her choice had ended a war before it began. The human turned to the generals and commanders of Earth. "From this day," he declared, "humanity does not stand alone. The galaxy stands with us, or it falls." The chamber shook with cheers, but beneath the sound, the princess felt something deeper. She had surrendered by law, but she had stayed by choice. Her maid stepped forward, kneeling beside her. For the first time, there was no fear in their eyes, only pride. They had become part of something greater than an empire. They had become part of humanity's rise. Above the city, the stars burned brighter. The warships drifted silent, the smoke cleared, and in the stillness that followed, the galaxy itself seemed to bow, because every world, every empire, every ruler now knew the truth. The age of humanity had begun.